There are moments in life, dark, painful, confusing moments, where everything in you wants to give up. Moments when your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling. When your strength feels dried up, your hope seems foolish, and your faith feels fake. You look around and nothing's changing. You look inside and everything feels broken. But I came to tell you something. You're going to make it. You may not feel like it. You may not see it. But you don't have to feel it or see it for it to be true. Just because you're in the fire doesn't mean the fire is going to consume you. Just because you're in the storm doesn't mean the storm is going to sink you. Just because it looks like defeat doesn't mean it's the end of the story. You're still breathing. That means there's still purpose. You're still standing. That means the enemy didn't win. You're still here. That means God's not finished. Let me tell you something about pressure. Pressure isn't proof of failure. It's proof of purpose. If you weren't carrying something valuable, you wouldn't be under attack. If there wasn't something inside you trying to be born, you wouldn't be in labor. Pain isn't just pain. It's often the beginning of power. I don't know what you're facing right now. Maybe it's the loss of a job. Maybe it's betrayal. Maybe it's sickness, depression, anxiety, or the silence of God. But what I do know is this moment is not your final destination. It's a chapter, not the conclusion. You might feel like you're stuck in a midnight hour. But remember, midnight is the turning point from one day to the next. Midnight means something new is coming, even if it still looks dark. You think God is silent? Maybe he's just writing. Maybe he's setting up the scene so that when the breakthrough comes, it'll be undeniable that he did it. See, the enemy wants you to quit right before the breakthrough. He wants to wear you down, not by overwhelming you all at once, but by a drip of discouragement, one negative thought at a time. He'll whisper, "You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. You'll never get through this." But here's the truth. You don't have to be enough because God is. You aren't called to carry it all alone. You aren't created to be perfect. You were created to press forward, not in your own power, but in the power of the one who created you, chose you, and still believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. So let the tears fall if they must. Let the doubts come if they will. But don't you dare give up. Not now. Not after all you've come through. Not when you're this close. Don't curse the ground that's growing you. Don't quit the fight when you're already bruised, because a scar only means you survived. You're going to make it. Not because the road is easy, but because the one who walks with you is faithful. Sometimes God doesn't take you out of the battle, he strengthens you through it. Sometimes the miracle isn't that the mountain moved, it's that you climbed it. Sometimes the breakthrough isn't instant. It's slow, step by step, day by day, breath by breath. But you will get there. Every tear you've cried, it mattered. Every prayer you've whispered, it was heard. Every sleepless night, every lonely moment, every quiet act of faith, none of it is wasted. He's turning it into something. He's turning it into strength. He's turning it into a testimony. So stand up, wipe the dust off, lift your eyes, take another breath. You're going to make it. Not because you feel strong, but because he is. Not because you have the answers, but because he has the plan. Not because everything is perfect, but because grace is sufficient. This isn't where it ends. This is where it turns. You're not buried. You're planted. You're not abandoned. You're anointed. You're not defeated. You're being developed. The pressure is building power. The setback is setting you up. The delay is not a denial. It's divine. So here's your word for today. For this season, you're gonna make it, even when it feels impossible, even when your heart is tired, even when everything says quit. God says stay. You're gonna make it. Now speak that over your life, out loud, right now. I'm going to make it. Say it again, I'm gonna make it. One more time, like you believe it, like your future depends on it. I'm gonna make it. Pressure is not punishment. It's preparation for purpose. That simple sentence flips the entire narrative of struggle and hardship upside down. Because when most people encounter pressure, their first instinct is to assume something is wrong, that they've taken a wrong turn, that maybe God is angry or distant or punishing them. But what if the pressure you're feeling isn't because you're off track? What if it's because you're exactly where you're supposed to be? What if the pressure isn't pushing you away from purpose, but actually pushing you deeper into it? Pressure shows up in different ways for different people. For some, it's the overwhelming weight of responsibility, the demands of life, the expectations of others, the internal battle to prove yourself. For others, it's the silence of God, the uncertainty of the future, the ache of unanswered prayers. Maybe you feel like you're being crushed under something you didn't ask for, something you can't control, something you don't understand. And it's tempting in those moments to believe that the presence of pressure is a sign of divine absence. But that's not how it works. The presence of pressure is often the clearest evidence of divine intention, because pressure shapes, molds, and strengthens what comfort never could. Think about how diamonds are formed. They don't emerge from gentle conditions. They are created deep underground, under intense heat and pressure, without the crushing force, without the conditions that seem harsh and extreme. The carbon remains ordinary. It never transforms. The same principle applies to your life. If everything stayed comfortable, predictable, and easy, you would never grow into the person you're meant to be. Purpose requires process, and process always involves pressure. Sometimes we pray for purpose but run from pressure. We want the promise without the preparation, the spotlight without the shadows, the victory without the valley. But it doesn't work like that. God often uses pressure as the pathway to purpose. He allows seasons of struggle not to break you, but to build you, to show you what's inside you, to bring to the surface the strength you didn't even know you had, to strip away the things that no longer serve where you're going. Purpose doesn't rise out of ease. It's forged in adversity. Look at anyone who has truly stepped into their calling, anyone making a difference, anyone walking in real authority, and you'll find a backstory marked with pressure. There's always a hidden chapter full of stretching, pressing, and refining. You don't develop depth in the shallow end. You don't build resilience without resistance. You don't discover faith when everything makes sense. It's in the pressing, in the crushing, in the waiting, that something eternal is being produced inside of you. Pressure also has a way of clarifying things. When life is easy, it's tempting to coast. But pressure exposes what's real. It reveals your motivation. It tests your foundation, turns off the excess. It humbles you. And in the process, it aligns you more closely with your true purpose. Because there's a version of you on the other side of pressure that is stronger, wiser, more focused, more surrendered. And the only way to meet that version of you is to walk through what you're facing right now. There are some lessons you can't learn from a sermon or a book. Some things you only learn when the pressure's on, when your back is against the wall, when you've run out of options and you're forced to lean not on your own understanding, but on a deeper source of strength. It's in those moments that purpose starts to take root. Not in your comfort, but in your capacity to endure. Not in your convenience, but in your commitment to keep going even when it's hard. And here's the thing, pressure doesn't last forever, but it always leaves a mark. It leaves you more equipped. It leaves you more sensitive to others. It leaves you more aware of your need for grace. Pressure will never be pleasant, but it will always be productive. If you let it, if you don't give up, if you allow it to do its work in you, what you think is punishment may actually be positioning. What you think is a burden might be a blessing in disguise. That pressure in your soul, that tension in your spirit, that discomfort in your journey, it could be the very thing God is using to prepare you for what's coming next. Because He knows what you're capable of. He knows what He placed inside you. He knows the calling over your life. And He refuses to let you settle for a life that's smaller than your purpose. So instead of cursing the pressure, start asking what it's producing. Instead of trying to escape it, start asking what it's exposing. You don't have to love it, but you can trust that it's not in vain. Every ounce of pressure is pushing something out of you that doesn't belong and pushing something into you that you're going to need. That's not punishment. That's preparation. That's not random. That's intentional. And it's all working together to align you with a purpose greater than you can see right now. You're not buried, you're planted. There's a big difference between the two, but they can feel the same when you're in the middle of it. When something is buried, it's hidden to decay. But when something is planted, it's hidden to grow. The environment looks the same. Darkness, dirt, isolation. But the purpose is completely different. When you're planted, it's not the end. It's the beginning. It's the setup for transformation, not the sense of defeat. But the problem is, when you're down in the dirt, it's hard to tell which one you are. Life has a way of putting you in that dark place. You lose a job. A relationship ends. A dream crumbles. You're praying and nothing changes. You're trying and nothing's moving. You're faithful and still feel forgotten. It's tempting to assume you've been buried, abandoned, dismissed, covered up with no way out. But what if the darkness isn't the evidence of death, but the environment of growth? What if what looks like isolation is actually incubation? See, a seed doesn't grow in the light. It doesn't sprout on a shelf. It has to go down. It has to disappear. It has to be placed in a place where nobody sees it, where it gets no applause, no attention, no instant reward. The seed doesn't fight the dirt. It doesn't question its placement. It lets the process work. And even though nothing seems to be happening on the surface, there is a battle happening underground. The shell is breaking. Roots are pushing. Life is forming. And all of it is necessary before the fruit ever appears. You might be in a season right now where nothing feels visible. You're doing your best, but you're unseen. You're praying, but it's quiet. You're making sacrifices, but nobody notices. But growth isn't always public. Most of the growth that matters happens in the hidden places, deep down. Out of you, in the space where God works the deepest. Being planted means trusting the dirt. It means believing that something is happening even when you can't see it. It means understanding that the darkness is not your enemy. It's part of your process. When people look at a seed, they can't see the tree inside. They can't see the potential. But the Creator knows. The Creator doesn't just see the seed. He sees the harvest. And sometimes He allows the seed to be planted in deep places, painful places, uncomfortable places. Not to punish it, but to position it. Because only deep roots can hold up tall branches. And only the hidden life can support the public calling. We live in a culture that wants fast results and visible success. But the kingdom doesn't grow like that. It grows in silence. It grows in obscurity. It grows when you stay faithful in the small things. When you keep showing up, even when you feel like giving up. When you remain planted, even when everything in you wants to run. Because the deeper the root, the higher the reach, the more intense the breaking, the more powerful the blooming. People may overlook you. They may count you out. They may assume you failed. But they don't know what's happening underground. They don't see the roots. They don't feel the stretching. They don't sense the movement beneath the surface. Just because it's not visible doesn't mean it's not valuable. God does some of His greatest work in the soil, in the dark, gritty, uncomfortable places where your character is shaped, your dependence is deepened, and your purpose is refined. When something is buried, it's left and forgotten. But when something is planted, it's watched and watered. God hasn't forgotten you. He's watering you with every word you hear, every lesson you learn, every tear you cry. The dirt might feel heavy, but it's not there to smother you. It's there to cover you until you're ready. The weight is making you stable. And just because they can't see you now doesn't mean they won't see the fruit later. And here's the thing, a planted seed never looks impressive. It never feels powerful. It's small, silent, and unseen. But one day it breaks through. One day it rises up. And when it does, it's not just a little stronger. It's completely transformed. It's no longer what it was. It's something new, something thriving, something unshakable. That's the promise of planting. That's the power of trusting the process. So if you feel like you're in a dark place right now, if you feel covered, hidden, pressed down, don't assume it's over. Don't assume you're finished. Don't believe the lie that you've been buried. You've been planted. And the same God who planted you is the same God who knows exactly when and how you'll break through. The silence of God doesn't mean the absence of God. That silence can be one of the most confusing and painful parts of the journey. You pray, but there's no answer. You worship, but there's no breakthrough. You cry out in desperation, and all you hear in return is quiet. And in that silence, the mind starts to wander. Doubt starts to creep in. Maybe God isn't listening. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's distant, or worse, maybe he's done with you. But silence is not the same as absence. Just because he isn't speaking doesn't mean he isn't working. Just because you can't feel him doesn't mean he isn't near. Just because he's quiet doesn't mean he's quit on you. There are moments in life when God is loud and obvious. You hear the confirmation. You see the miracle. You feel his presence all around you. But there are also moments when he's still. When his voice is like a whisper you can't quite catch. When you're left wondering if you missed something, or if you've been forgotten. But silence can be sacred. Silence can be strategic. Silence is where your faith is revealed. When everything is silent, you find out what you really believe. You find out if your worship was rooted in convenience or commitment. You find out if your trust was dependent on answer or anchored in truth. In every story of faith, there's a season of silence. Abraham waited for years to hear the promise again. Joseph sat in prison, not hearing anything except the echo of forgotten dreams. David cried out in the Psalms, asking why God had forsaken him. Even Jesus, hanging on the cross, cried out to the Father and received no answer. But silence wasn't absence then, and it isn't absence now. Silence is a space God sometimes uses to build something in you that only silence can build. It's in the silence that roots go deeper. It's in the silence that motives are purified. It's in the silence that your trust stops depending on your circumstances and starts depending on your Creator. Silence doesn't mean God is withholding love. Sometimes it means he's preparing you to recognize it in a deeper way. It doesn't mean he stopped caring. It means he's strengthening your capacity to carry what's coming. Because if your faith only works when you get answers, it's not really faith. It's just agreement. Real faith holds on when there's nothing to hold on to except a promise. Real faith endures the silence, not because it enjoys the stillness, but because it trusts the character of the one who's silent. God often speaks the loudest through his silence, not with words, but with presence. Not with instructions, but with the invitation to lean in closer. Because silence forces you to slow down, to listen differently, to surrender control. It breaks the pattern of always doing and forces you into being. Being still, being quiet, being in the moment with no guarantees, no signs, and no answers. Just you in the stillness. It's in that place that something sacred happens. You begin to realize that even in silence, he is sustaining you. Even in silence, he is guiding you. Even in silence, he is God. Sometimes silence is the space between the seed and the harvest. The space between the promise and the fulfillment. The space between your cry and his response. But that space isn't empty. It's full of unseen activity. Just like a seed breaking open underground. Just like a baby growing in the womb. Just like a sunrise waiting behind the horizon. It's all happening, even when it's not visible. That's what faith is for. Not to control the timing, but to trust in the waiting. Not to escape the silence, but to believe through it. When God is silent, it's not because he has nothing to say. It's often because he's already spoken. And now it's your time to stand on what he said. To walk it out. To keep moving. Even when there's no new instruction. He doesn't repeat himself just to ease your anxiety. He doesn't answer on your schedule just to keep you comfortable. He speaks, and then he watches to see if you'll walk. He leads you into silence not to confuse you, but to form you. There's a kind of strength that can only be found when you're walking through a wordless season. A kind of confidence that's built not on constant reassurance, but on settled faith. A kind of intimacy that's born not out of constant conversation, but out of shared presence. Because even when he's not speaking, he's staying. Even when he's not answering, he's abiding. He's there in the stillness. He's there in the shadows. He's there in the silence. Watching, holding, carrying. The silence of God is not the punishment of God. It's not the rejection of God. It's not the abandonment of God. It's the proving ground of faith. It's the stretch before the release. It's the pause before the promise unfolds. And it's in that silence that something eternal is being written, not in sky, but in your soul. You don't have to feel strong to be sustained by grace. That idea shatters the illusion that strength always has to be visible, that it has to be loud, that it has to look like confidence and energy and boldness. There are times when strength looks like showing up when you feel like hiding. When strength looks like taking the next breath, the next step, the next prayer, even when your heart is heavy and your body is tired. And that's where grace comes in. Because grace doesn't wait for you to be at your best. Grace steps in when you're at your weakest. Grace doesn't require strength. It supplies it. We live in a world that tells us to be strong all the time. Push through, power up, don't show weakness. Strength is not about pretending to be okay when you're not. Real strength is not the absence of weakness. It's the presence of grace in the middle of it. Grace is the divine empowerment that meets you in the moment you feel most unqualified, most uncertain, most incapable. It fills the gap between who you think you need to be and who you really are right now. It's not about trying harder. It's about surrendering deeper. There are days when your emotions betray you, when your thoughts turn on you, when a heaviness in your soul makes even the simplest tasks feel impossible. And the temptation is to believe that you're failing because you feel weak. But what if those feelings aren't a sign of failure, but a signal to lean into grace? What if the moments you feel most fragile are the exact places where God wants to show himself strongest? Grace doesn't just patch up your weakness. It flows through it. It doesn't need you to pretend. It needs you to trust. When you think about strength, you might picture someone standing tall, fearless, unshaken. But sometimes real strength is found in the one who's kneeling, trembling, crying out for help. Because strength isn't always about appearance, it's about endurance. It's about leaning into something bigger than you when everything inside you wants to give up. Grace is not a reward for the strong, it's a lifeline for the weak. It's the hand that reaches down when you're slipping. It's the breath that fills your lungs when you feel like you're drowning. It's the whisper in the storm that says, I've got you. You don't have to feel strong to keep going. You just have to be willing to receive what's being offered. Because grace doesn't knock loudly. It doesn't force its way in. It comes gently, steadily, faithfully. In the middle of your mess, your confusion, your breakdown, grace is there. Not asking for your perfection, not demanding your performance, just offering presence, just offering power. Just offering peace, and sometimes that's more than enough. So many people walk around exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually, because they're trying to carry a weight they were never meant to carry alone. They're trying to be strong for everyone else, trying to hold it all together, trying to keep up appearances while their soul is unraveling. But grace doesn't need you to hold it all together. It works best when you admit that you can't. When you stop pretending and start depending. When you drop the pressure and embrace the promise that his strength is made perfect in your weakness. There's a kind of beauty in brokenness when grace is present. A kind of light that shines through the cracks. A kind of testimony that only comes from walking through weakness and finding out you weren't alone. Because grace not only sustains you, it teaches you. It teaches you that you're not defined by your failures. that you're not disqualified by your struggles, that you're not forgotten in your fatigue. It teaches you that being strong doesn't always look like winning. Sometimes it looks like not quitting. Sometimes it looks like standing when you'd rather lay down. Sometimes it looks like asking for help, crying out in desperation, clinging to faith with trembling hands. Grace is not a concept, it's a current. It carries you when your legs give out. It moves you when you feel paralyzed. It covers you when shame tries to speak. It reminds you that you are not the sum total of your strength, your performance, or your image. You are sustained by something deeper, stronger, eternal. When the pressure rises, when the demands feel like too much, when the expectations weigh you down, grace lifts the burden, even if just enough for you to breathe again. You may be walking through a season where your energy is gone, your passion feels faded, your direction unclear. And maybe you've been judging yourself harshly because of how little strength you feel. But grace isn't asking for a performance, it's asking for permission. Permission to hold you. Permission to help you. Permission to take what little you have and make it enough. There is no weakness so deep that grace can't reach. No valley so dark that grace won't enter. No soul so weary that grace won't sustain. And the miracle of it all is that even when you don't feel strong, even when you don't feel ready, even when you don't feel worthy, grace still shows up, still fills you, still carries you forward. The enemy attacks hardest when you're closest to breakthrough. That's not just a motivational phrase. It's a spiritual reality. There's a certain kind of resistance that shows up not when you're off track, but when you're about to step into something greater. It's not when you're going the wrong way that hell throws everything at you. It's when you're aligned, focused, surrendered, and pressing in. That's when the attacks intensify. That's when the pressure increases. That's when the lies get louder and the distractions get stronger. Because the enemy knows something is about to shift. He can sense the coming breakthrough before you even see it. And his goal is simple: to get you to stop short, to walk away, to turn back just before it happens. Breakthrough doesn't always look like you imagined. Sometimes it comes quietly, slowly building beneath the surface. And right before it arrives, things often get messier, not clearer. There's a shaking, a stretching, a chaos that makes you question if you're even moving forward at all. You find yourself in a place where everything feels unstable. You feel attacked in your mind, in your relationships, in your emotions. You start questioning your value, your vision, your voice. You wonder if you missed it. You wonder if you misheard. But that confusion is often a sign that you're on the edge of something new. The enemy doesn't waste bullets. He aims at what threatens him. And your obedience, your persistence, your faith, it's a threat to darkness. He doesn't attack your past. He attacks your potential. He isn't after where you've been. He's after where you're going. That's why it feels like you're fighting battles no one sees. That's why it feels like you're wrestling with invisible weight. Because you're not just carrying your story. You're carrying a purpose. And the weight of that purpose will always attract opposition. But here's what you need to remember. The level of your resistance is often a reflection of the size of your calling. Great callings come with great battles. And the greater the impact of your breakthrough, the more intense the battle to get there. But here's the truth. The enemy can only fight from the outside. He can throw confusion, distraction, but he can't override what God has planted in you unless you surrender it. His only real power is deception. If he can convince you to give up, he doesn't need to defeat you. You'll do it for him. If he can distract you long enough, he doesn't need to stop you. You'll stop yourself. That's why your ability to endure matters. That's why your willingness to keep going, even when it doesn't make sense, is so powerful. Every step you take in faith is a blow against darkness. Every prayer you pray, even when you don't feel anything, is a weapon in the spirit. Every time you refuse to quit, even when you want to, you're advancing the kingdom. You have to understand that pressure doesn't always mean something is wrong. Sometimes pressure means you're getting closer. It means something is crowning. It means something is about to be born. And that's why the fight intensifies. The enemy is terrified of you realizing who you really are, of you stepping into your full authority, of you refusing to be silenced by fear or shame or fatigue. He wants to exhaust you in the waiting so you'll forfeit what's already yours. He wants to break your focus, steal your peace, rob your identity. Because he knows if you stay grounded, if you stay planted, if you stay faithful, he's already lost. You are closer than you think. Closer to the breakthrough, closer to the healing, closer to the answer. The enemy's attacks are not a sign to give up. They're a sign to press in, to worship louder, to pray harder, to speak truth even when your voice is shaking, to stand even when your knees are weak. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to persevere. You just need to hold on to what God said, even when nothing around you reflects it yet. And when you feel surrounded by resistance, remind yourself, resistance is a sign of movement. It means you're advancing. It means you're growing. It means the enemy is nervous. You weren't meant to walk away at the wall. You were meant to see it fall. You weren't meant to drown in the storm. You were meant to walk through it. You weren't meant to live under attack. You were meant to live in victory. But victory doesn't always come with a shout. Sometimes it comes with a whisper. Hey, won't give up here. So if it feels like everything is against you right now, if it feels like you're under siege, if you're questioning why the fire got hotter, why the road got harder, maybe it's because the enemy sees something you haven't seen yet. Maybe it's because your breakthrough is closer than you think. Maybe it's because you're about to step into something that changes everything. Don't give up now. Don't turn back. Don't let the pressure fool you. You're almost there. Keep moving. Keep believing. Keep speaking. The enemy wouldn't be fighting this hard if there wasn't something powerful on the other side. And the God who brought you this far is not about to leave you now. You're going to make it. You're going to see it. And when the breakthrough comes, you'll look back and realize the battle was worth it.